Hello, fellow birders. My name is Denis Kania. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the female diving ducks that can be found in DuPage County. On the DuPage Birding Club Education channel, we'll be discussing all things bird-related. And as I mentioned, today we'll be looking at the female diving ducks of DuPage County. So here's a quick look at all the males of our diving ducks. And here we have canvasback, we have redhead. Those two might provide a little bit of confusion just because they have those reddish toned heads and pale backs. But if you take a close look at the bill structure and head profile, you'll see that they're quite different, with a sharp angle here on the red head and a very easy, gentle slope here on our canvasback. Here we have ringneck duck, and ringneck duck in some instances might be confused with the scaup, but you can see that the peak on the head is quite pointy compared to what we find on the scaup, and it certainly has this well-marked bill that would help to separate it. Here's our two scaup, and they can present some problems. We have greater scaup here and lesser scaup here. And again, looking at the head structure, looking at that profile is how we'd probably tell those two birds apart most easily. And you can see the high point is always on the either above the eye or in front of the eye on greater scaup, and it's typically behind the eye on lesser scaup. And in either case, it's never anywhere near as peaked as what we see on the back of our ringneck duck here. Here we have bufflehead, and here we have common goldeneye. Here we have hooded merganser. I have on occasion seen people, when birds are bobbing out at distance out on a pond, they see that big white patch in the head. I've had people make the mistake going either way. But on a closer inspection, you can see that, buffleheads are all white below here, whereas our hooded merganser has a busy pattern here on the breast, and then the flanks are very brownish in color. And lastly, we have our ruddy duck male, which in breeding plumage is going to show a very, very nice blue bill. We may see them in the fall. They'll be lacking that bill, but they still have that white patch here in the face. And it's a very small duck, and quite often they'll have their tail erect out of the water. And so that would be easy to pick up as well. But our main focus here today is on the females. And here we have all the females. And again, in the same order, we have a canvasback, we have redhead. This is our ringneck duck. We have greater and lesser scaup. We have bufflehead, common goldeneye, hooded merganser, and ruddy duck. And for the merganser, there's actually 3 species of mergansers that we can see in the county, but just as a representative of the 3 in general, I'm using the hooded merganser. So here's the first 2 ducks we want to take a look at, the canvasback and the redhead females. And they should be told or separated pretty easily. You can see that even the female canvasback is very, very pale on the back compared to what we would find on the redhead. Both of these ducks would probably be paler on the back than most all of our other female divers. But separating these 2 apart, you can see there is a difference as being lighter than this one. You can also see a difference, even though they have these all brown heads, which look very similar. One thing you'll notice is that they are very clean. There's no other markings on these birds' heads. So that'll help us down the road as we're comparing to some of the other species. But again, look at that profile of the head and bill on redhead, and you can see there's a sharper angle here than anything that we would see on canvasback. This is a very, very gentle slope here. So we should be able to tell those 2 apart. You can see that this has redhead has a very bluish bill with a very black tip on the end, and it's a large tip to it. And canvasback, the bill is all dark. So there's lots of easy ways to separate these 2. Here's our ringneck duck. And as I mentioned earlier, these can sometimes be confused with either of our scaup species. And there are some characteristics that would overlap between the 2. Certainly, it's not a rounded head. We do have a high spot on the head. We do have a pale area at the base of the bill. And those features would remind us pretty much of either the female scaup. So there are some other things that we can look at. For one thing, ringneck ducks should have an eye ring. It might not always be quite as prominent as we're seeing in these 2 individuals, but there will be an eye ring. And The bill will have this interesting pattern of a black tip, and then near the base, right near the tip of the bill, you'll also have a white band. And again, it may not be as conspicuous as we're seeing on these two individuals, but there should be that extra little white line on the bill that you wouldn't have on any of our other divers. And one other thing that you can look at in the flank area, where on scaup we would have a uniform brown flank, but on ringneck ducks we're going to have a vertical patch that runs up and down here near the breast of the bird, and you can see it's pale at that point, and it's not as conspicuous on this individual, so it won't always be showing a strong contrast there. But some of the individuals will actually have a very strong contrast like this one has. So you can watch for that as well. But the main thing probably that's going to make this bird stand out, if you don't have one with a strong white line on the bill, is the fact that the peak is just very, very strong, much stronger than what we expect to see on the scaup. And here are those scaup. You can see the two females look very, very much alike. So we're going to have to rely on just some of the basic structural characteristics that we just talked about on the males. And that is, there's a difference in the head structure. Where the high point is on the head is what we would need to look for. And with greater scaup, the high point is either going to be above the eye or to the front of the eye. And on a lesser scaup, the high point should be behind the eye. So you can look for that structural feature. Both of them are going to have this pale area at the base of the bill. But we can look at the bill, and greater scaup should have a larger bill, and that can be difficult to tell at times when you only have a lone duck. But we would expect the lesser scaup to be smaller. And you can maybe do a comparison of the bill size to the rest of the head. And that, in fact, does make this bill seem larger than what we're seeing here. And you'd also want to look at the black tip or the nail on the bill. And you can see that it's quite large and noticeable on the female greater scaup and much less noticeable on the female lesser scaup. So for some further elaboration on the separation of these two species along with ringneck duck, you can go to DuPage Birding Club's mini tutorials, which this is a part of the series. But look in particular for the one that covers those three species. And here's the link. I'm providing you with the link to go to look at that specific tutorial. So do check that out, and you'll get a better feel for the separation of these birds. So here we have a couple of our divers that are actually our smallest divers. And these two females both have some unique patterning going on in the face that you're not going to see on any other female divers. And so in the case of the bufflehead, we have this white smudge that's in the cheek area here. It's below the eye and behind the eye. And it's on an otherwise all kind of grayish brown looking bird. And you just have that one little swatch of white in the face. It does have a very small bill. So that's a pretty unique combination of characteristics, and you should be able to tell that bird pretty easily. Another one that's fairly easy to tell is the unique patterning that we find in the female ruddy duck. And you can see below the eye here, we have a pale line, and then below that pale line, we have a dark line. And we don't have any other female divers that are going to have that kind of a banded pattern in the face. You can see this is a much larger bill than what we have on the bufflehead. It's kind of a flattened looking bill, so it does give a different profile than we see on most of our other ducks. And again, as I mentioned with the male, the ruddy ducks do like to hold their tail out of the water. They do call them stiff tails, and that can quite often be a key mark to look for, to see that tail raised out of the water like that. So here we have our common goldeneye, and what's unique about this bird is it does have this very well-rounded head, and then protruding from that is this very conspicuous looking dagger looking bill. It's a short, stubby bill, and it's very tall or wide at the base. So you can see that it's reaching from here all the way down to here. The combination of the height here at the base with the shortness of the bill just gives it this very dagger look. You can see that represented here as well. And you might notice that the tip of the bill is pale in color, and that can stand out as well. And in this nice brown head, you do get this very conspicuous yellow eye. So that should be a real standout feature as well. So here's our hooded merganser. And like all of our mergansers, and we do have 3 of them that show up in the county, aside from this hooded merganser, we also have common merganser and red-breasted merganser. All 3 of them are going to have this type of a bill, which is very unique, very different than all of the other bills on our diving ducks that we've been looking at. It's a very long, narrow bill. Actually has a serrated edge to it, which you're not likely to see in the field, but it is a different, certainly a different looking bill than what we see on any of our other divers. All of our mergansers do have some kind of a cresting going on. It's probably strongest here on the hooded merganser, but common mergansers and red-breasted merganser females also have a fairly strong crest. And this one, this species in particular, is an all brown head. The red-breasted merganser and common merganser would be more of a rufous color, but you'd still get the general idea that you're looking at merganser, mainly because of that bill structure. So it should be a fairly easy ID to pick out female hooded mergansers, and those other 2 mergansers would end up being fairly easy as well. And for a discussion of all 3 mergansers, again, going back to one of our other tutorials on the DuPage Birding Club mini tutorial series, there is one on mergansers, and we address them in much greater detail than what I've given you here today. So again, here's the link to go and find that other tutorial. So do check that out. So some key points to remember: look at the head first on all of these divers, and that might be all you need in order to separate them. The structure is every bit as important as the plumage, and do check out very carefully, the bill color. It might be difficult at times with lighting to be able to tell the color, but do try to work on that. And all these birds, you don't just watch them for a second and come up with an ID. You may have to study them for a while, watch their behavior. Their structure will change as they move about. So you want to kind of get a good handle on what you're looking at, especially when you're looking for that high point on the crown of one of the scaup. You don't just instantly see that. You need to kind of watch those birds for a while as they change their posture a bit. Often our diving ducks can be found in small groups swimming together out on the pond. And after you've gotten a good feel for the birds in male plumage, take a look at the female counterparts that are in that same group and concentrate on the structural features at that time. And that'll be a big aid to you when you come across a lone individual out on the pond on another occasion. So thanks for taking the time to view this video. Hopefully we've given you some bird food for thought, and I hope you'll join us again in the future as we explore all things bird related.